Tip number 36, company meetings. In tip number 35, we learned that they were important, probably always knew they were important. Let me explain something about company meetings here. And even if it's a repeat of what we talked about in the other tip, I still think it's extremely valuable. One of the problems that I see in shops is that owners and managers become kind of micromanagers. They interrupt employees for things that they shouldn't be interrupted for. Because they see something that they don't like or something that's happening in their company that they've talked about in the past that they want different. And they feel like, I need to talk about this right now, and they go out and they interrupt the employee when the technician is trying to get the job done today so that we can get the $6,000 and get it in the bank because the service advisor is pushing the tech. And or they interrupt the service advisor when the service advisor needs to be answering phones and estimating so that the technicians can be busy. We have company meetings, if for no other reason really, to make sure that there's a place where the owner or the manager can come in and go, hey, I was in the shop a couple of days ago and the shop is just not as clean as it should be. And I think that if we're communicating correctly, we've already decided at some point that we want to have a clean, well-organized shop, and we did that in a previous meeting. And so if I was running that meeting and I was the manager, I would say, guys, what kind of a shop? You remember, I don't know, 6 weeks ago when we had our meeting and we discussed the kind of business we want to be, that we talked about having a clean and organized shop. And right now, as I look at the shop, and last Wednesday I was in there were rags on the floor, there was coolant, things aren't getting cleaned up the way that they should be. The shop just didn't seem to meet our standard. So let's kind of reiterate what the standard is. Do we really want to have a clean and organized shop? And then if we do, what's the benefit of that? Or what's the problem if we don't have a clean and organized shop? So company meetings are a place where we could have those conversations. And they kind of officially mean that we're going to be able to talk about something different and not interrupt our employee. We're going to do it in the company meeting. So one of the things around communication is don't interrupt people for things that are not emergencies. If I saw a technician crawl under a car on a jack with no jack stands, you bet I'd reach over there and I'd pull that guy out and I wouldn't let him go under that car. Or if, we had a defective rack and I saw a technician working on that rack with a car in the air, of course I'm going to go over and interrupt them. If I notice that there's no brakes on this car and someone's getting in the car and they're going to drive it, of course I'm going to go over there and stop them in the middle of the day, in the middle of whatever they're doing. But if there's nothing else, no emergency, and I see that the shop isn't as clean as I want it to be, I'm certainly not going to interrupt my employees in the middle of what they're trying to do and get accomplished today. I'll bring it into a company meeting. Now, company meetings should be at a specific day and time, regular. Now, I'm going to tell you that you should have weekly meetings, and again, that's a reiteration from our last tip. But weekly meetings done on a specific day at a specific time. I don't like early morning because people don't want to come in an hour early. It's difficult, especially if they have kids. I don't like evening meetings because they're worn out. And if you try to keep them one night a week for an extra hour, they want to go home to their families. They're done working, and you're not going to get the kind of energy. I like doing my meetings during lunch, kind of in the middle of the day. And frankly, even if I didn't do it during lunch, I'd probably stop sometime in the middle of the day and have a company meeting. So by setting an agenda, by setting a time frame and saying, look, every Wednesday or every other Wednesday, we're going to have our company meeting, and we're going to do that at lunchtime. I'll provide lunch. You come in. We'll have a conversation. That's important. Now, another thing that's important to be successful in company meetings is having some structure. And structure is an agenda form of some type. Now, we have a couple of different agenda forms in our documents library here at the Institute. Happy to get you some copies of those if you would like to see them. But basically, it has three different items to a page. The first item is item number 1. It says who's going to be the presenter, who's the person that's going to talk about this and head this up. And then it has a place for some notes where we talk about, what do we think we need to do, how do we think we're going to get it done, who's responsible, and then when is it supposed to be done. It's kind of that strategy form, but it's written in documentation. There's also a place for some notes on what the discussion was about. And then at the end, there's always this person is responsible and this is when they're supposed to do their action. And on our agenda form, there are actually 6 of those different items. And frankly, 6 is too many. You're going to barely get through 2 if you're really having good discussions. I think some of the owners or managers now are kind of tuning out a bit because they're saying, well, we tried it and it didn't work, or when we have meetings, our staff doesn't really participate. Please don't tune out because this is too important. The reason that staff doesn't participate is because their ideas are not heard and or they don't feel comfortable in that meeting. As you go and as you create a means for them to participate, and if you're a good leader and you almost force them to participate, meaning you call on people for different subjects and you solicit their ideas and then you implement some of those ideas, they're going to start to feel better and better about the communication. If they feel like it's a waste of time, you don't want to have a meeting longer than an hour. You're going to hold their attention for 45, 50 minutes. If you've got a really heated debate going on about something, you might hold their attention for a little bit longer. But really you want to try to keep it to an hour or less for a company meeting, which means that we're going to get through 2 to 3 agenda items. The reason we have 6 on the form is, who knows, maybe we get through a couple really fast and we move on, and we have the ability today to get through some more. But it's really also for the next meeting or the next meeting. Those items move up the agenda and become more important over time, or they move down the agenda and something else more important gets put into the agenda. So having an agenda for your meetings, having a regular time for your meetings is important. Another way to get people to participate is to rotate duties. In our company, we had a list of all employees, and one week the person that ran the meeting. There was a secretary or a recorder, for want of a better title, and then there were people that were presenters. If somebody brought an idea to the meeting, they could put it on the agenda, and most of the time they would be the presenter. If I had something that we needed to discuss in our company and I put it on the agenda, sometimes I would make someone else the presenter, and I would talk to them if it had to do with them or with their job duties. Having rotational duties, I don't always want to have one person be the secretary. It's kind of funny to me, in our society we want this equality thing, yet it seems to me that a lot of times the female people in our company end up taking the notes, and they end up taking the notes because somebody in the company goes, you take the notes. And I'm pretty sure if that was me, I wouldn't want to take the notes all the time. So what we did in our company was we had a note taker. That person rotated. So you were the note taker this week, which means that you made sure that there was an agenda. You made sure that the agenda was filled out. You made sure that people knew that they were going to present certain items so that they would be prepared. You made sure that everybody got a copy of the agenda, and then during the meeting you took notes. And after the meeting, you printed off the agenda form with all the notes, and everybody got a copy for their book. All of my people have a team book that they keep their meeting notes in. That way we kind of know what's happened, and we know what's been on the agenda, and we know what we're talking about, and so things don't get lost. That person who was a note taker in the next meeting is the leader of the meeting, so they become the person who runs the meeting. And then there's a new note taker, and that way in my company it was always rotated through. People's positions, what they did in the meeting rotated through, so everybody in the company got to be a note taker at some point in time. everybody got to be a presenter at some point in time, and everybody got to run the meeting at some point in time. I think it's beneficial because it helps people understand what's going on and what's required, and they're nicer to other people who do that position later. Next, I think you need to have some rules about your meeting. And I think that the rules are, number one, common courtesy. Don't interrupt other people. Don't tell them their ideas are stupid. Believe me, in company meetings, I've heard some pretty stupid ideas, but they go on the board with all the other ideas. And then later they get pulled off and the better ideas get moved forward. Common courtesy, number one. Number two, in our meetings, one of our rules was everybody plays, meaning that everybody participates. And it was kind of funny because if you were a person who didn't participate, whoever was running the meeting was basically tasked with making sure you participated. So you might become a presenter just so you'd participate, or someone would be asking you questions during the meeting so that we could get your or solicit your feedback. Next, in a company, there's this issue of trust. Do we trust each other enough to be open in our communication? So we have to be trustworthy. But the rule is you need to say what needs to be said. And it's kind of a two-part rule because there's another rule that comes in right behind it. So, if somebody's not doing their job and that's affecting you in your position, or that's affecting the company in a certain way. Let's say that we have a cleanup guy who's not cleaning up. Well, hopefully the manager has noticed that and called that person in for an individual meeting to discuss what they're supposed to do, their goals of their position, etc. But if they haven't, and in a company meeting somebody says, hey, the place isn't as clean as it's supposed to be because someone isn't cleaning up, you got to be able to say that if that's what's really going on. So rule number 3, say what needs to be said. Rule number 4, don't take it personal unless it's personal. I mean, if you're the person who's not doing the job and you truly are affecting everybody else, then wake up and don't complain that somebody recognized that you're not doing your job. Hopefully, again, a manager would take care of that before it got to a meeting. But frankly, if it did happen in a meeting, then we all ought to go, yep, okay, and we ought to come up with solutions to make sure we have a clean shop, whatever that is. I think last but not least in our company meetings, we leave united. That's a rule, meaning that if I had something on the agenda and I wanted us to do something a certain way, but I didn't get my way, then I didn't go out later and talk about how bad what we're doing is and how we're not going to be successful. When I left, we're united. We've decided as a team that these are the things we're going to do. We know that they may not work. We hope that they work. We hope that they make us better. Later, when what we did doesn't work, I can bring my idea back up and hopefully convince other people that this would be a good way to accomplish what we need to. But nobody goes out and complains or gripes or moans about what we chose. We are united when we leave our company meeting. Now, I know that I've said this a couple of times. I'm going to say it one more time before we finish. Regular meetings are important. If you do not set aside time for regular meetings, you will not happen. If people are not communicating in a formal way, in a defined way, in a defined place, they'll be communicating in their bays. They'll be communicating to each other throughout your business, which will decrease productivity. It will increase frustration, and that's not what we want in our company. We want our company focused. We want everyone on the same team. We want to have a culture of solving problems, and we do that through regular communication, and an important part of that is team meetings. I hope this has been beneficial to you. Thank you for spending your time with me. Again, if you like what you heard, please give us some feedback. We'd love to hear your questions, or we'd love to hear what you have to say.